All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for being here. Before I delve into the heart of the event and, of course, introduce the guests, I would like to give a brief explanation of what International Wrongful Conviction Day is and what it represents. This is persistent and innocent lives continue to be impacted. Today, on International Wrongful Conviction Day, we come together not only to acknowledge the prevalence of this issue, but also to celebrate the resiliency, unbreakable bonds, and far-reaching ripple that are experienced by the families and the communities of those who bear the weight of these wrongful convictions. It's a day to spotlight their stories, their strength, and their unwavering commitment to justice. So, 3,287 years lost. And of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg, because these are just the cases that we were actually able to prove and exonerate. And anybody here who was in my classes, or of course those who have been directly affected by those, know exactly how hard it is to prove anything in this realm and to exonerate people. It is estimated that about 3 to 5% of all convictions are actually wrongful. So that's about 40 to 100,000. Multiply that number by at least 3 or 5, family members who are also affected. We have a significant issue on our hand, and it's not just one, 2, 3 people who are criminal justice students. I hope and wish that you take these things that you learn here with you throughout your career and remember it and do your job better. You have to, it's on you to do better by those people and by our society. Before I introduce our esteemed guest, I would like to give this floor to our wonderful Vice Provost, Dr. Andrew McKenzie, who himself is an avid advocate for social justice and the driving force behind many initiatives here at St. John's that are aimed to promote the Vincentian values of the institution and allow us to make a valuable contribution to the cause of justice and equality for all.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. On behalf of our Provost and our Vice President for Academic Affairs, who is Dr. Simon Moeller, I'd like to extend a hearty St. John's welcome to each of you to this International as panel moderator. The mission of St. John's University is built upon the teachings of St. Vincent de Paul and his belief in the dignity and worth of all persons, especially the poor and the marginalized. It states that, quote, wherever possible, we devote our intellectual and physical resources to search out the causes of poverty and social injustice and to encourage solutions that are adaptable, effective, and concrete, end quote. Through our Inside Out program, which since 2016 has brought St. John's students into correctional facilities to take classes with incarcerated students, we have provided educational courses and workshops for incarcerated students at Rikers Island, at Queensboro Correctional Facility, and Westchester County Jail. I'm very happy to say that even about a half an hour ago, I just finished a meeting with the president of St. John's, Father Brian Chanley, and others in a very positive discussion about the introduction of a post-scholarship program here. Post-prison scholarship program here to be initiated in the fall of 24. We'll definitely keep you posted on that. So in closing, the mission of St. John's implores us to educate future criminal justice and legal professionals through a pedagogy based and rooted in social justice. To prepare those future professionals to provide a voice for those whose voices go unheard, we are proud to host such an important event today here at St. John's, and we thank you again for your participation.
Before we begin, I also wanted to draw attention to the fact that Dr. Matthew Johnson, he is here, a colleague from John Jay College. He also has copies of his book. He recently wrote on wrongful conviction in sexual assault cases. Feel free to check it out, talk to him, buy a book. Extremely well received in the academic and practitioner crowd, so he's right there. Our study on wrongful convictions in serial cases has just been published officially yesterday also, so big deal for us, definitely. All right, well, thank you, Andre, and it is now my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Jeffrey Deskovic, who is my longtime partner in crime, well, pun intended, in organizing and partaking in various events, raising awareness about and advocating for those affected by wrongful convictions. Not only that, but he and his foundation have also now become our partners here at St. John's in both the academic service learning program that I'm running with my class and within a larger initiative led by Dr. McKenzie. So ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to introduce a man whose life story embodies the very essence of resiliency, determination, and unwavering commitment to justice. Jeffrey Deskovic.
Thank you very much. International Wrongful Conviction Day, it's an initiative by Innocence Canada with the idea of having organizations and individual advocates across the world to all engage in one kind of event or another on a formal level like we're doing today, on an informal level, in any way possible, do something on October 2nd. In reference to Wrongful Conviction Day. And of course, if the logistics don't allow for that particular day, very close behind or afterwards. And the idea, of course, is to raise further awareness about wrongful conviction, with, of course, the hope being that as people become more aware of wrongful convictions, and that is a prerequisite to getting necessary policy changes passed through state and federal legislatures across the world aimed at preventing wrongful conviction. Wrongful convictions. And part of that also built into that an ambitious initiative in which we're hoping to one day get October 2nd to officially be entered into the calendar as a wrongful conviction day. Dr. Soroczynski mentioned nationally 3,386 people across the country have been exonerated just from 1991 forward. I want to share that New York has the dubious distinction of being third in the country in terms of wrongful conviction, with that number being 333 people just from 1991 forward. So we have a lot of work to do here in New York. At the back end of the program, when I'm done here on the front, I'll return at the end, and I'm going to discuss some legislation that is currently pending, which would prevent wrongful conviction. I'm going to discuss some other legislation that is not currently pending, but should be, and so we hope to get that introduced. For those who are not aware, my name is Jeffrey Deskovic, and I was exonerated after 16 years in prison. I was arrested when I was 16 for a murder and rape which I did not commit. I got convicted when I was age 17. It was for a murder and rape, with the wrongful conviction being caused by a coerced false confession, prosecutorial misconduct, fraud by the medical examiner, terrible public defender. A lot of people think that innocent people would not confess, but actually it's been the cause of wrongful convictions in 29% of the DNA-proven wrongful convictions. The year was 1990. It was in Westchester County, New York, and a classmate had been found murdered and raped. Peekskill was a small town, a population of approximately 25,000 people. Murders were fairly rare, so when this murder happened, it created an atmosphere of fear, rumor, paranoia. Parents were concerned with their own safety and the safety of their children. In high school, I was quiet. I was to myself. I didn't participate in a lot of organized sports, so that made me seem strange to the kids in the high school. And the police interviewed a lot of students from the school, and some of them told the police they might want to speak with me. This is how I got on the police radar. I was a sensitive teenager. This was my first brush with death, and I had an emotional reaction. But the police thought that being as though I barely knew the victim, she was in 2 of my classes as a freshman, 1 as a sophomore, I knew her name, she knew mine. That was really the extent of it. We weren't even really on a high vibe basis. And so they thought that my emotional reaction was suspicious, that it was some sort of indication that I was sorry for, what I had done. Then the Peekskill police got a psychological profile from the NYPD, and that had purported to have the psychological characteristics of the actual perpetrator, and I had the misfortune of matching that. So, type of reinforcing factor. So for about 6 weeks, the police played this cat and mouse game with me, in which half the time they talked to me like I'm a suspect, and when I become frightened and want to get away from them, then they switched it up, and Jeff as this junior detective helper theme was pushed. Well, look, the kids won't talk around us, but they will around you, so let us know if you hear anything. Stop in from time to time. They would ask me opinion questions and congratulate me that my opinion was correct. Prior to being a teenager, I thought about having a career as a police officer when I grew up, so that theme appealed to me at the age of 16. And I came from a single-parent household, and that intersected with the good cop, bad cop routine, where I began to look at the officer who was pretending to be my friend. I began to look at him as a father figure. And eventually got me to agree to take the lie detector test. So the next day, instead of going to a high school, I went to the police station for the test. Because it was a school day, my mother and grandmother thought that I was in school, so they didn't call around looking for me. They had no idea that anything was wrong. And instead of giving me the polygraph at the police station, they drove me across county lines, 40 minutes away. They took me from Westchester County in Peekskill, where I was from, to the town of Brewster, which is in Putnam County, which meant that I couldn't leave anymore on my own. I was dependent upon the police. I didn't have an attorney present. I wasn't given anything to eat the whole time I was there. I was given the 4-page brochure about how the polygraph worked, but then I didn't understand some of the big words, but I figured, well, I'm there to help the police, so what does it matter? Let's just get on with it. And from there, he put me in a small room and gave me countless cups of coffee, which got me nervous. And then he attached me to the polygraph machine, and he launched into his 3rd-degree tactics. So he raised his voice at me, he invaded my personal space, he kept asking me the same questions over and over again. And as each hour passed, my fear increased in proportion to the time. And he kept that up for 6.5 to 7 hours. Towards the end, he said, "What do you mean you didn't do it? You just told me through the test result that you did. We just want you to verbally confirm it." That really shot my fear through the roof. And at that point, the officer who had been pretending to be my friend, he came in the room and told me that the other officers were going to harm me, that he was holding them off but could not do so any longer, that I had to help myself. Then he added, "Look, just tell them what they want to hear. You can go home afterwards. You're not going to be arrested." Being young, naive, frightened, 16 years old, I wasn't thinking about the long term. I was just concerned with my safety in the moment. I was overwhelmed psychologically and emotionally. I was in fear of my life because the fact that I didn't know where I was and no one else did either loomed quite large in my mind. So I took the out which he offered, and I made up a story based on the information that they had given me in the course of that interrogation. By the time it was all said and done, I collapsed on the floor in a fetal position. I was crying uncontrollably. Obviously, I was arrested. I was charged with a murder and rape. Ultimately, I lost 7 appeals. I got turned down for parole because I maintained my innocence rather than expressing remorse and taking responsibility. And ultimately, I wound up doing 16 years prior to being exonerated through DNA testing via the DNA data bank, which not only exonerated me, but also identified the actual perpetrator. and whose DNA was only in the data bank because left free while I was doing time for his crime. He killed a second victim 3.5 years later after killing the victim in my case. So all of my charges were dismissed on actual innocence grounds. He was subsequently arrested and convicted of the crime. So I've been home for 16 years. I've become an advocate. I have the bachelor's from Mercy College, which gave me the scholarship to finish that. I got the additional credential of a master's degree from John Jay College of Criminal Justice with my thesis being written on wrongful conviction, cause, and reform. I used some of the money that got as compensation to start the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, whose mission is to free the wrongfully convicted and to pursue policy changes aimed at preventing that in the first place. We've gotten 13 people home so far. And we've helped pass 6 laws, many of them in collaboration with a national coalition group called It Could Happen to You, which the foundation is part of that coalition, and I'm an advisory board member of them. I got tired of sitting in the front row of the courtroom, so I went to law school and I became an attorney. I had my first success as a lawyer. We helped free Andre Brown after 23 years in December, a couple of weeks before. So Wrongful Conviction Day, we remember the men and women that we metaphorically left behind, while at the same time we celebrate and we use as inspiration the people who have already made it home. And on Wrongful Conviction Day, we always acknowledge the people who've been exonerated already, who survived, who faced immense challenges in reintegrating back into society. And we also recognize people whose innocence claims are recognized as legitimate claims that are verifiable, who are still fighting for exoneration. And these are not just numbers, they're real people. I love recognizing people who've been exonerated and fighting for, and so this is my favorite part of the program. So I would like to start out recognizing a Queens native here, which is where the school is, who survived 23 years in prison prior to exoneration. Please stand, face the crowd, and wave. Robert Majors is home. Another person who is a speaker, we'll be hearing from her later today, offering some really great perspectives, because when we think about wrongful conviction, we typically think about men, but actually this happens to women as well. And so Sammy Werkheiser is here after 4.5 years exonerated. Sammy, of course, had the particular horror, suffering every exoneratee's nightmare after her conviction was overturned the first time after serving 30 months. She was released and then got reversed. And so she had to return back to prison for an additional 2 years before she again got the conviction overturned, and this time the case is finished, so she's here to stay, but she survived everyone's nightmare. Let's hit her again. Later on as well. Eric Turner is with us, who was exonerated after 3.5 years. Eric, please stand and wave. Foundation client whose case is in the conviction review unit in Brooklyn, who we helped get out on parole, reintegrate, and we're now in the process of Gelada here seeking to clear his name. Divine Whitfield survived 25 years, and he's here. Visiting us from Montana, a man who's him a little bit later on, briefly, he'll put a little meat to his story, and more importantly, he'll share what the initiative, the policy change that his group is pushing in order to prevent wrongful conviction. So this time, we're going to have Sharon.
But, it's interesting when you hear all these stories, and many of them really sound very similar in a way, and some are very different. Talked about his association and how he started, so I'm going to talk about the other side so that you have a sense of what happens in family units when families are getting caught up into this type of situation, because it would probably but family members who go through this process with their loved ones also feel a sense of incarceration. They feel a sense of hopelessness and despair, not being able to and in that group were kids at 14, 15, and the oldest one was 16 years old, and that particular child was mildly retarded. When we look at these situations in terms of what's happening in wrongful incarceration today and how our justice system in a way has gotten away from us, it's almost like handed them the ball with no instruction on what it is they're supposed to do or how they're supposed to act. And after we do that, we put in place things that say, we're going to protect you if errors are made while you're doing your job. They cannot be held accountable for the things they say and do. Many times they can't even be fired because that's the system that we have in place. It's not the same way if you're a doctor working in a hospital and you make a mistake and the hospital decides to terminate you, or if you're a teacher, you have your own insurance, you make a mistake or you do something wrong and you're terminated. It's not the same. These people that we have who are supposed to be looking out and protecting our interests have a step above the law. They have a get out of jail free card. And we have authorized that. And most of the time, it was authorized during a time when we thought that type of thing was necessary for them to do their jobs. But the more that we look into these types of situations, we realize, at least I have realized as the mother of someone who was caught up in this kind of whirlwind, that there needs to be checks and balances within the system itself that protects innocent people as well as the guilty. And the other boys were arrested for a crime they didn't commit, convicted for a crime they didn't commit, and spent jail for a crime they did not commit. No one was coming to their rescue. I had to go out and work with people in the community who were familiar with these types of activities of the police to get movement going and to get a constant, visualization, recognition, knowing that these things were actually happening. On one occasion, I went and I spoke to a company, Con Ed. They have a giving program. And I was speaking to them on behalf of children who were incarcerated regarding them using their giving program to right incarcerated children. Many of these kids who we call juveniles, and we use that term so that we can further villainize them and it make it easier for us to do whatever it is we want to do with them because they're not children anymore. They're juveniles. They deserve what they got. There's no get out of jail free card for them. There's no compassion. There's no understanding. There's no help, really. They deserve it. Anything that happens to them is good for them to happen. While I was giving my presentation, one of the men questioned me on why I was lying about the government in terms of there being children who were incarcerated within the United States. I was amazed to hear that. And so I explained to him that my children was one of those that was incarcerated within the United States. And I also said, where did he think the children go when you see them walking in the news policemen in the front, policemen in the back. They're all cuffed. Sometimes they're being carried on their arms so they can't run and get away. I said, where do you think they go? They're not going home. They're in prisons. Once you reshape the dialogue, it's amazing what you can get away with. The children in this case of the Central Park Five, now the exonerated five, the majority of them were given 5 to 10 years incarceration. And the oldest boy, who was 16, was given 5 to 15 years. All except for the oldest boy actually finished their whole term. They did the 7 years in prison. They did 3 years on parole. They did an additional 3 years on Megan's list as sexual predators. Sexual predators. Who's going to hire somebody who's a sexual predator and bring that person into the workforce so that they can begin a new life? Who's going to do that? Everywhere you look, people are watching. Everywhere you go, they want to know, well, why are you out of jail? You're not in jail still? Why? It's almost similar to the types of things that people asked me when all this stuff was happening. How could I have a child like that? I wonder, how could I have a child like that? You know, that's a question you ask God. He sent me a child. I just had it. But in doing all of that, it makes you wonder and think about the various things that we need to do to change and improve on this society. When they came out of jail, and even after the exoneration, there were still limited opportunities that were there for them. It took almost 10 years for them to receive financial compensation from the government for their wrongdoing. 10 years. So during that time, they have to live somewhere. They have to eat something. Or are they expected to eat out of the garbage cans? They need clothes. I mean, life goes on. But where do you put these people? In this limbo zone while you're waiting for assistance. As a result of that, we started a bill, Assembly Bill 818, in regards to compensation for not only those people who've been wrongfully incarcerated, but also for their family members. Because in a way, they've been incarcerated too. They're the ones who are receiving the phone calls. And at that time, those phone calls was almost like racketeering. The amount of money that you pay for a phone call from prison. Yet racketeering is not legal in the United States of America. Quite a few things are not legal, but if you're doing it in jail, it all becomes legalized. And we have to look at that. We have to look at the commissary. We have to look at when you go to visit and you're buying that expensive food out of that machine that you can't hardly eat, you know, who's getting paid for that? We have to look at issues regarding these places that our young people, our men, our women, our children, you know, at one time it was the men that were filling up the prisons. It was the men. Then they started working on the children, then they started working on the mothers, so now the whole family is gone. The only place that's truly safe for us to be is working as child givers for white people. It's all right for us to do that because that reminds them of a safe place during slavery times. That's what we did. We were in these safe places, but it's not safe for us to do our own children because there's something innately wrong with them. There's something wrong with our families. We have to get away from that. And there are a lot of strategies that we need to put in place to make it work because they've been doing a massive job on us. They've been criminalizing us to the point where if you see policemen stop someone on the street today, their first thought is, oh, they must have did something. We don't think, oh, that could be an innocent person. That could be a person that looks like somebody else. That could be somebody who doesn't know anything about what's going on. We don't think those thoughts. What is happening to us? We have to change. Because unless we change that, this system that we are under will never change. There'll always be another innocent person that's walking out of their door for the first time and turns around and the policeman said, well, what have you done? Haven't I seen you walking up and down this street before? It's very interesting how we are portrayed in this society. And we must push against that in every way we can. We must save as many innocent people as we can. And to do that, we have to have systems in place that work towards those agendas of salvation for these people. That 300 and something people that they mentioned that have been saved so far this year, it's just a drop in the bucket. There are so many others who are walking around outside who haven't been given opportunities to be saved because their cases are not picked up by others. Right. And it's not that they are not innocent. They have no one who's willing to work their case. They have no money to go and fight their case. They are those people who are walking around innocent yet guilty. This is a tremendous issue in our community and in our lives. Most people don't realize it because you say, well, I can always move away. You can't move but so far to get away from all these people. Too many of them are coming out of jail. And we have to change to a system so that those people who are coming out and those people who are innocent also have an opportunity to move forward with their lives in a positive way. And if we don't do that, we will never be free in our society. Because unless all people are free and have justice, no one has.
Thank you very much, Sharon. That's really so it's both an honor and a privilege for me to introduce our next speaker, a truly remarkable advocate and activist whose life story is a powerful testament to the indomitable spirit of resiliency, compassion, and unwavering commitment to social justice, Sammy Warheiser. Her journey into the world of advocacy and activism is a shining example of how personal experiences can inspire a lifelong mission to bring about meaningful change. Please give it up to
Can I walk around the long way? Sorry. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Can I set something on this? Is that okay or no? Yeah. Or here? Yeah. Can I set it?
yeah, that computer is off actually.
So I can do that?
Yeah.
Hi everyone.
Good afternoon. Hi.
I'm really well, first of all, I'm gonna be right in this very moment and say that standing here, actually being here in this room, actually talking to beautiful, gorgeous students that are alive and learning, this is such a gift. So I want to control my emotions, and I also want to make sure that I say all the things that I would want to hear if I was a student. So I'm trying to collect myself. So what we're going to do is we're all going to take a deep breath together, for me, if you would. Okay, so we're going to breathe in through our nose and out through our mouth. I feel way better. And I was honest about my trauma. So I had this binder that I could open up and read, but I was so inspired by your mother's love that I'm going to talk completely from the heart, which I never do. So one thing that is just like on my heart to say is that my body breaks out in hives. Don't worry, that happens because I'm Irish. Anytime I'm mad, sad, angry, or happy, which is all the time, it happens, but particularly in public speaking. So don't get worried for me. I'm not dying. So not everybody has a mother's love. And why I was getting so emotional is because I'm estranged from my mom. But here you have this beautiful woman who stands up here and you can hear in her voice that she has 1,000,000% been fighting for her child, and now she continues to fight for people she doesn't even know. So I would like to give an exclamation point applause. Okay, that being said, I'm just going to flat out tell you, when I was in 11th and 12th grade social studies, I could never even imagine that I would be the 44-year-old gay woman, dance teacher, married to that woman, mother of that son, that's standing here. So I believed what social studies told me. I believed that there's no way you could go to prison unless you actually effing did something. Why would they convict someone if they didn't have evidence? How could they even do that? There must have been something. And so now what I'm about to tell you is a nightmare. I'm going to tell you my nightmare. And when I got out of prison, I thought I should take the nightmare and I thought I should put it here. But I've been able to eat food, which you see that I like, because I've taken the nightmare and I've put it here. So I'm going to tell you what my nightmare is. My name is Sammy Werkheiser. I'm a 44-year-old woman from Binghamton, New York, which is a little upstate town. And I'm a dance teacher. That's what I did. I had a really successful dance studio. I actually ran a dance studio business with my wife, Julie Werkheiser. She's right there. And we had an incredible, successful business. But before that, I left my husband for a woman. Please gasp. Okay, but you have to remember, it was a gasp 23 years ago. It's not so much a gasp today. You're laughing. 23 years ago, let's go back to the year 2000. I'm going to say it, and I want to hear your reaction, because you're going to shift in your seat. I left my abusive ex-husband for a woman. Everyone shift. Everyone feel comfortable. So this was a scandalous thing, and what followed was a custody battle. And in the middle of the custody battle and all of the mudslinging, my ex-husband got custody of my beautiful 2 daughters. Gorgeous daughters, Scarlett, born in 1998, probably close to your age, Stella, 1999. 2 beautiful girls. So when I left my husband, and by the way, he is proven to be abusive. He pled guilty to the abuse, and he actually did time in jail. So he actually pled guilty. I'm not just saying that to you. My children were 1 and 2 years old, and that's when I got with Julie. We raised the little girls for about 9 years, and I lost custody. He remarried a woman that had means, and they got an attorney. They took out a $25,000 loan. They got custody of my beautiful dancing daughters. So I want you now to think of me and Julie and 2 girls, because now she has them. He has them, I'm sorry. So in the middle of this custody battle, I have to do parenting classes. You can see that I have mental health concerns. I'm being open about that. So I had to do pattern changing classes. I had to do psychiatric evaluations. I had to pay $65 per hour supervised to see my children. You heard it. My visits were in a library, and they were timed. And the lady took notes, and I asked my daughter why her hair was chopped to her ears, and it was because her stepmother had her do it, and the last thing I said was, please don't cut your hair. So, I lost custody of the girls. But then in. I did all the things the court said. And I was ready, and the judge was there in Syracuse and hit the mallet and smiled to me. And a family court trial was going to be happening in September of 2011. And August of 2011, right before this trial, I get a phone call. Hello, this is the Binghamton City Police. Is this Samantha Werkheiser? We need Julie Werkheiser and Samantha Werkheiser to come to the Binghamton City Police. Me. Is everything okay? Are my children okay? They're fine. Both of them are fine. Are you sure they weren't in a car crash or anything? They're fine and they're alive. Come down to the Binghamton Police Station. We drive. We go to the Binghamton City Police Station. They put Julie in one room. They put me in the other. They leave me alone in the room. I look at the piece of paper. At the top of the piece of paper, it says, predatory sexual assault of a child. This is 2011. My kids are 11 and 12 and 13 about this time. The allegations were that, the first allegations were that in the bathtub, while I was in the bathtub with my children, because it was two separate charges, that there were charges of predatory sexual assault. I will tell you, and I have admitted that I did take baths with my kids until they were about 5 years old. I'm a hippie, that's what I did, just telling you that that's the truth part of it, okay? So the first allegations were about the bathtub. Once I saw that, I said I wasn't going to answer any questions because I had watched enough crime TV to know to ask for a lawyer. And that's only because I watch TV. Not everybody watches TV or knows that, and I just want to put that out there. So they let Julie go that day. She was not charged. I had to go in front of a judge that day, and I was told that I was charged with predatory sexual assault of 2 children, my daughter Scarlett and my daughter Stella. So I actually awaited a couple of years until the trial. But the worst part about waiting for trial, it put an order of protection in place right away. And do you know what that means? Couldn't see Scarlett and Stella. It was an immediate solution to the family court petition and the family court situation. So for those whole 2 years, I couldn't say to my daughter, what are you saying? What is happening? Because the charge itself put that in place. My wife and I, in the midst of all of this, for dating back to 2006, had done fertility treatments. All we wanted was our own family anyways. Separate, like not our own family, but our own child, okay, separate from the girls. And especially losing custody, I was in horrible depression, horrible. So we did all these fertility treatments. Well, guess what happened? I got pregnant with twins. So when I was convicted in May, Mother's Day weekend, they convicted me Friday of Mother's Day weekend in 2013. I went to prison pregnant with twins. On July 5th, 2013 at 8:36 p.m., Jacinta Rain Werkheiser was born. She lived 22 minutes. Her surviving brother, Julius Kingston, is 9 years old, was born in prison and is sitting here today, and he can stand because he's incredible. The theme of today is the family effects of incarceration. Guess what happened the weekend of his 1-year birthday? The police came to her door, and they came up with a totally new charge and said that not the children were sexually abused at our home, but the children were sexually abused at the dance studio, which was a totally different county, which wasn't, because the first county that convicted me wasn't cooperating with the family anymore, the family that wanted for us to be convicted. So now, guess what happens? She gets charged. How do you think that made our dance, how do you think the lesbian dance teachers who are now, one is in prison and one is now charged, how do you think that did, where do you think the dance studio is now? I taught my first dance class in a church basement on Saturday. So we're trying. But here's what I want you to know. I've gone through 2 trials. My wife on September 1st, 2023, won her 440 motion. Okay, but here I'm telling you about all my things. I'm only one story. This is my story. I went to Bedford Hills Correctional Facility with all of these women, and they don't have attorneys, and they don't have white privilege. And guess what? They're innocent, and they're in there. And the reason I'm here to tell you is I want to tell you about Shaniqua Thomas, okay? I want to tell you about her, because she's there for 18 years, and there's not one person fighting for her. So I'm standing here only because of 14 attorneys, all those freaking dance moms. That's why I'm here. I had a support system, not everybody does, okay? You're only seeing me and my mouth and my blonde hair and my body because of my privilege. And that's the damn truth. And if you want a pen pal, go on Facebook to Mothers on the Inside, and I'll set you up with one of my friends who I've suffered with. The family effects of incarceration since I was released in 2019. My wife, Julie Werkheiser, I've had to pay for J-Pay stamps, Securus Technologies. I had to do Emma's Premium Services vendor foods. It's been an effing nightmare. Not to mention I'm in the prime of my life and haven't had sex for a decade. Laugh. But the last 32 days have been great. And what I want to say is that Jack Deskovic visited me in prison. This man visited me in prison. Not only did he visit me in prison, but he introduced me to the attorney that freed my wife. Hours and hours talking to you about everything, but what I want to let you know is when I was released, I came up with a grassroots organization called Mothers on the Inside, and what we did is we met with other formerly incarcerated individuals, and we found out what do we need to do to help the women on the inside, or the gender non-conforming individuals, or gender fluid individuals. And guess what they wanted? They wanted underwear, tampons, and bras. That's what they wanted. And so, over a 6-month period, we collected 2,000 underwear, packages of underwear. From the floor to the ceiling in our house was underwear. And I took the underwear, and I brought it to the jail myself, because the first pair of underwear that I had to put on when I was pregnant with twins was stained with another woman's blood. And the reason I share that is because it's real. The general public doesn't really know that you get stained underwear. And it was my dream for there to be a room of clean underwear for women. And guess what? There is. But guess what? I'm not a hero. I'm a human like you. I made a choice. I asked people for help. And you're going to do the same. You might not be wrongfully convicted. You might never go to prison or see a day. But you're going to think in your mind, what's the one little thing that you can do to change the world? And you're going to do it today. And I love you.
Thank you.
So I would like to ask Jules Werkheiser to please come up, and I'll ask her a few questions. Our first public speaking of any kind, and they're first as a family. Please come up. Let's interview.
I'll take a picture and I'll get your number at the end.
So you've been home for 32 days. What's been the struggles and difficulties, and what's been amazing?
Okay, well, let's do, I guess, the struggles first, so that we can end with the joy at the end. My first night home, I actually struggled with sleeping, believe it or not. A lot of emotions were overtaking me. It was hard for me to believe that I was actually in the freedom life and that I was okay and not in a prison cell. And I had a lot of difficulty sleeping, and part of it was also that the sound was very soft, had expired and all that, so that was something I had to go through. I still can't get a bank account for some reason. I tried to open a bank account online and they wouldn't let me do that. I have to figure out the next step for me. So those are all some of my struggles. Other small things like just readjustment things. But the joys are, of course, just getting to wake up in a room close to family every single day and hearing my son while I'm still sleeping in the other room whispering, I can still hear him, to his mother, can you go wake mom up? Because he's just happy to see me and he's missed me, so that's really cool. Stepping outside in the sunshine and not being told I have a certain amount of time to be out there and enjoy the sun, there's no fences or razor wires around, has been really amazing. This campus, even just walking up to this, is very beautiful, so I hope none of you take that for granted. It's gorgeous and it feels very free to walk through here. But I've been able to attend a lot of different things with my son. I get to help him with his school and his reading. Those are all complete joys. We get to have ice cream together that's not on a visiting floor where we have to get it from a machine and be looking over our shoulder every 2 seconds to see if some officer is going to yell at us for being too joyful. But just like the real simple things, having a hot shower, things you wouldn't normally think of that are, you know, really a blessing. We don't really think about those in everyday life, but I do, and I'm not taking any of that stuff for granted now, so I'm super happy and grateful.
But to give additional context, I have a follow-up question I almost hate to ask, considering that wonderful note there. Let's get a legal status though. I mean, you're home, your conviction's overturned, you're free, but your case is not finished. Maybe speak a little bit to that for a second, and not just the informational part, but if you could share a little bit on the emotional and mental level, the implications of the case not being finished.
Sure. Okay, so like Jeff said, for me, just to give a little bit of background, I went through the appeal process. I was not successful on my direct appeal. My case was affirmed by the appellate division in the 3rd department. And then of course I went to the New York Court of Appeals and was unsuccessful there. So through Jeff and meeting our new attorney, Arthur, he came into the picture and luckily agreed to help. He took a look at all the facts in my case and he saw some things that didn't look right to him, which I'm super grateful for because he's the first attorney really that I feel truly understands what happened, and he took a lot of time to get to know the facts and he uncovered things that even my trial attorney I feel failed to do. So he filed a 440 motion for me, a 440-10 motion, which is to vacate the conviction. And initially we were unsuccessful with that. So that goes in front of the trial court judge. So we had the whole 440 put together and my trial court judge denied the motion, at which time we appealed to the appellate division and they agreed to grant me an evidentiary hearing, which took place in April and May of this year. Went back to the trial court, but it was in front of a new judge, which I feel had a lot to do with it. The judge in my trial had retired, so we had a judge from a neighboring county hear the facts of my case, and he overturned my conviction based on newly discovered evidence, which is a recantation in my case, and ineffective assistance of trial counsel. So, yes. The overturn, however, came with just a new trial. So I had to go back to the county and I had a bail hearing. And so I was released from prison, from jail. ROR'd actually, also. Thank you, Heavenly Father, that was a big deal. But I am facing another trial. So I'm waiting for that, and that of course is a very scary thing. My wife had the same thing happen to her. So I think you heard her say she had 2 trials. So her first trial, her conviction was overturned by the 3rd Department because of hearsay evidence that was improper. So she went back, faced her 2nd trial, and was found guilty at that time. So knowing that information and that I'm sitting in kind of the same position right now is a very scary thing to me. Because like we're talking about here today, we'd like to think that the justice system works. And once you know, got your conviction overturned, oh, surely this time they're gonna see the right stuff. They're gonna see the facts. Everybody's gonna understand, you know, what happened, and I'm not gonna be wrongfully convicted again. But it did happen to my wife, and it could happen to me. And I feel like I would be kind of foolish to not understand that reality. So I am fearful of that. It's not something that I talk about a lot. I don't like to talk about that in front of my son. It's painful and it's scary for the family. So I keep a lot of that to myself. I did, you know, get an email from my attorney just last week that motions are coming up for the new trial, and getting that email brought me a lot of anxiety. So this is what I'm going through. I do feel that I have a lot of things that are very positive and favorable, which we're not going to get into all of that. I have a lot of confidence, but I have a lot of fear, and I do, you know, I do carry that through my daily walk.
We appreciate you sharing those things. I know that was very raw, and you know, your new home, and this is your first. But by pre-arrangement, the young fellow here is going to get a couple of questions from me. We do have the family theme, and you know, talking about the implications, the human aspect of it. So I have a couple of questions for you. All right. So, you know, if what's your first name again? Julius. Okay, Julius. Okay. So when I ask the question, I'll move the mic over and you'll speak into it, okay? All right. So, Julius, if you had the chance to speak to other children whose parents are incarcerated, what would you say to them, having gone through that yourself? What would you say to them? What would you share with them?
I mean, it's hard, but there's people in your life that can help you go through it. It can be embarrassing. To talk to other kids about it. And
do you think that, let's say that today we got to talk to somebody whose mom was in prison right now, and you know, your moms are out of prison, and they were saying to you something like this, like, Julius, I don't think my mom's ever gonna get out, and I just don't even feel like I can talk about it. What would you say to him, like if you were his friend, like that? Like, I know one thing that helped you was maybe talking to Grandma about it on the phone, right? And what were some other things that helped you, do you think?
I mean, it really helps when you have other people in your life that you can talk to about it and that care about you and love you and are there for you. Those are the kind of people that will help you get through it.
And what about this? What were some of the things that we were able to do to stay close and connected?
Like you and Mommy. What did you get to do with you and Mommy?
While I was still there. Like, what are some things we were able to do?
I mean, a lot of things help. When I visited her, that helped a lot. Phone calls, that definitely helps.
Did you ever get to take videos and send them to me?
Yeah.
A lot. Did I ever make like projects and drawings for you, stuff like that?
Yeah. It's cool when you have someone that can do that, even though they're not there with you, and even though they're not there with you, as long as you can be in touch with them, that definitely helps. Like drawings, phone calls, just seeing that person, whoever it is, it helps them a lot.
I have one simple question, then we'll be on, okay? Now that you don't have to visit either of your parents in prison, but you can actually live with them, what's that like?
It's very fun, but it's a lot to control. I mean, I'm only 9, and she's been only home for a month, and it's cool, but I'm still getting used to it. I think she's still getting used to it.
And that's the truth. And that is so honest. Good job.
I would like to recognize another person fighting for exoneration who walked in a couple minutes late. Foundation client, I'm representing him, who survived 20 years of wrongful imprisonment, trying to overturn the conviction now. The fingerprints now at the crime scene never matched him to begin with. Wayne Drummond is here. Okay, so did you want to say something?
Yeah.
All right. You want to say something? Come.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm touched by what that young man just said, you know.
Yeah.
I have to say something.
Okay.
I'm saying something just for him. Just for him.
Okay, go ahead.
I was incarcerated for 20 years, wrongfully convicted. One of my deepest regrets of being incarcerated was not being able to reconnect with my sons. I have twin sons who were very young when I went to prison. And over the years, their mother would bring them on a conjugal visit, which is a blessing. This is a blessing in New York State. You're able to get conjugal visits where you spend time with your kids. And if you're still married. After a while, she left. But I connected with my sons. But it was never, the relationship was never the same because of the absence. And it could never be the same. And I tried to make up for lost time, and it didn't work. So what I do, I told my son, since as I wasn't there for you all them years, you see those 2 grandkids, I'm gonna be there as much as I can for them. This is my reward to them for not being there for you. Young man, it's a struggle. When I heard him speak, and it touched my heart, so I have to say that. You'll be okay because you have both parents home, and it's going to be a tough journey, but God bless.
If you're not crying at this point, you have no heart. So we have another speaker coming. He's a bit delayed, so we're gonna switch around a little bit, and we have Jeffrey Deskovic talk again about some of the current issues.
Sure, and before I do, I'd like to call another person up just to give a short thumbnail on his story. Anthony Dolce, who, as I mentioned, was falsely accused. He's going to explain the thumbnail of his story and how that led him to start the Stop False Police reporting group and what the legislative initiative is that they are advocating for, and how that. So, Anthony.
My name is Anthony Dolce. I'm the Executive Director and founder of the Stop False Police Reporting Group and the Stop False Police Reporting Initiative. And I'd first like to say this bill were co-authored by me, which will make it a felony for both civilians and police officers who file false reports against any protected class of person in the state of New York. It also calls for the creation of a public database to track and record, and most importantly, to publicly identify who these police officers are and who these civilians are who are using lies to destroy innocent lives in our community. The perpetrators, the police officers and the civilians who are committing these crimes against innocent people. So we have a lot of work to do. We all have the ability to do our part, get involved, donate your time to any cause around the movement of wrongful conviction. I was also wrongfully committed to a mental ward. And there are 24 states in the United States that have. So, and where's Julius? Julius, you're my new hero. Stand up. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you. You have a community around.
The way the law is now, they are mandated to record custodial interrogations, but they have exceptions for homicides, sex offenses, and drug cases, and that's the case. What the implications of those rights were, or waiving them every time they got to the part where it said anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. My mind went to what I saw on TV, and I thought about different civil courts, and I'm thinking, court, what are you talking about? We're not going to court, So, case for free, and Sammy was speaking about incarcerated women that have no representation, and it's typical that many of us who are exonerated, we typically don't win appeals. It's through that evidence is proof that you received inadequate attorney representation. There was so I had a case like that in Buffalo, and that's what I was relegated to arguing. And at the end of the evidentiary hearing, which I won the right to, we lost the case. The better argument was, the newly discovered evidence, but we couldn't make that argument. So this bill would allow it. It simply would require the court to consider. You have to get an attorney, and that's a lawsuit, and that's a process. So it took me 5 years, for example, to get from point A to point B. And so reentry services were things like housing and cost of living and mental health, doctor and dental care, and access to public transportation, job training, job placement, classes on technology. All these things should be provided by the state on day one. On day one, not relying on strangers or on family members that often have people at the same time. So we need to limit the caseload. We should have an equal playing field. The public defender's office should have the same budget and therefore the same manpower and access to investigators and experts as the district attorney. Mandatory reporting on child abuse. Why aren't the judges? Why is it not mandatory that they report prosecutorial misconduct? And why do prosecutors get to have anonymity? Prosecutorial misconduct. Can we have a name? If I was charged with a crime like I was, my name's out there, isn't it? Well, what happens when that's before I've been convicted? Well, what about if a prosecutor has been found to have committed misconduct? Why should they have the anonymity? So, that's an important measure. And, prosecutorial immunity, and I'm gonna wrap it in a second, but prosecutorial immunity is a terrible doctrine which says that no matter how serious or egregious the prosecutorial misconduct is, if it's happened, arrest evidence of your innocence. What if they suborn perjury? What if they allow their witnesses to commit perjury and they don't correct it? What if they make improper statements in their opening statement or improper arguments in their closing argument? And the end result of it all is, I do, but they're above the law and you can't. And their argument is that, well, we need prosecutors to have a free hand in the courtroom, and we want them to instead be spending their time defending lawsuits. But my answer to that is, police officers don't have that immunity. They're able to do their jobs. We wouldn't have this unjustifiable deadly police force, killings often caught on camera. So it's a lot more than a few bad apples. At the same time, it's definitely not everybody either. So lest anyone think that it's so far left that we would like to get rid of that, I think it's essential. We just need the if you see something, say something. We need the clean ones to blow the whistle and say something, force the dirty people out of those professions so we can have a more accurate justice system. So that's pending legislation. I would be remiss if I didn't mention there is still the parole reform measures that have yet to get a floor vote either. Fair and timely parole, which is a proposition which is that the parole board would have to cite, of denying parole, they would have to cite one additional factor. They can't just say, well, nature of the crime. Because that's never going to change. They should have to cite one additional reason beyond that in denying parole, and of course, elder parole. So elder parole, if you're 55 and you've also served 15 years, you would be guaranteed a parole board appearance, not a guaranteed release. If we're a society that believes in the second chance, if we really do believe in rehabilitation, if we really do believe in redemption, then we should give people a second chance by granting parole. So imagine, I saw so many people when I was in prison, they were literally living in honor block. They were otherwise serving as role models, and they had college degrees and finishing vocational trades and completing college other programs designed to address the offense that they were in prison for, and yet they would go to the parole board and they would be denied, come back in 2 years, and appear again and denied again, come back in 2 years, and have that going seemingly forever. So I believe in those measures. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jeff, and thank you for all the hard work that you are doing in order to pass this, to make this legislation actually happen. With that, I wanted to say I apologize. One of our guests is completely stuck in traffic, so he was unfortunately unable to make it. And I would like to thank our guests again, first of all, for being here, and for sharing the heart. And I do want to open the floor for questions. I have a question for you guys, and I know everybody probably has that question in mind, but I wanted to ask if you could speak to a little bit the moment when your son came back or your wife came back, and how does that, that relationship and the whole adaptation and support, and how like, if you could just talk a little bit about that process of getting somebody back and going through the everything that they have gone through.
She's asking to go first. So I'll go first. So for me, I think the truth is I feel that my partner is different. and not bad different, but just actually different. And so every single day I'm trying to take the differences and I'm trying to support her in ways that I think are kind. But I mean, we have been separated now for 10 years by incarceration. And then losing your best friend for 10 years, and then all of a sudden, like, your best friend survived without you for 10 years, so they have all of these skill sets, new connections, and like 10 years is a long time, right? So, like, you know, in one day, the first week she was home. So, you know, like, the adjustment, I think, is just actually taking the formerly incarcerated individual where they're at. Sometimes a lot of people feels overwhelming, sometimes no people feels empty. It's just like almost like a day-to-day thing. So I'm not perfect. I'm not a newly, you know, free person, but what I can say is that I'm trying to take every single day, and I'm trying, like, it's also hard. That's also the real truth. Like, my son actually answering that question and his honesty and saying, like, I know it's only been a month. She got out of prison. She has a 9-year-old. So we have had to survive based on the kindness of other women. We were both in female prisons, you know. So, I mean, I'll let you fill in all those blanks. Real life, right? So we've been home 32 days together, and all I can say is that I just really want to try to rebuild, and maybe we're not the same marriage that we were before. Maybe we're completely different, but I'm willing to really work hard and make it work. And I'm not perfect, but I am cute.
When my son was released from prison, he was released, he was still guilty. That's why I asked her to go first. But so it's like a similar experience, but it's different in a way, because when he came to see, though, and I imagine what is true with anybody who comes out, is on our way driving back from the prison after we picked him up, we stopped in that pancake place, and he ordered some kind of, I don't know, some kind of, let's say pancake, because I don't remember if it was a pancake or waffle or whatever. But he ordered this thing, and when they brought it out, it was burned on one end. And so he looked over at me and he said, "What should I do?" I said, "Send it back. We're paying." In prison, you eat it.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, so it's like a whole different kind of experience. Then you have to work on figuring out, can you go to the bathroom? Do you have to ask to go to the bathroom? Can you get food out of the refrigerator? Is it okay? Is it okay to go outside? Can you do this, that, or the other? It's like a whole kind of accustoming yourself to being able to do stuff that you used to do all the time. So it takes a while. It takes a while, and both sides of the coin are a bit apprehensive regarding this journey, because, you know, our thoughts is, you know, is he going to be safe if he goes out? If somebody's going to bother him or whatever, you know what I'm saying? So we're thinking about that, and he's thinking, well, can I go out? Is it, you know, can I walk down the block? Can I go downstairs in the elevator? It's a whole new kind of experience when you have these types of things, and we have to be there for each other when they happen. Because in one situation, when you're coming out and they say you have been exonerated or whatever happened, well, people are glad to see you. In another situation, you're coming out, you're still guilty. I don't know if they feel that good. It's how life rolls for you.
Since we have the family theme, I want to briefly mention, you know, it was awkward for me when I would meet up with members of my extended family, because the overwhelming majority of them never came to see me, and the few that did, you know, they would visit and then disappear for 3 or 4 years and, continue that way. So imagine talking to somebody and you're related to them and you know who they are because you have memories from when you were younger, but you're a different person now and so are they, and the evolution back to the point where they are now. But in many ways, I mean, like sometimes I make rounds on holidays, but it's because what people are supposed to do. But in reality, I mean, there's no real special close interaction. I think that's definitely a byproduct of wrongful imprisonment.
Mine's not actually a question, but along the exact same lines. I did a little over 33 years wrongfully incarcerated. And when I was locked up at the age of 20 years old, my little brothers and sisters were still 2, 3, 4, and 5 years old. So my whole entire incarceration, they grew up without me. They grew up not knowing me, not that they didn't know who I was or where I was. And when they were real small, Mom would have to bring them to the visiting room, because she had kids. I mean, but to this day, I've been out for coming up on 8 years at the end of November, but to this day, they now are adults, they have kids, they have lives, they have homes, and they forget to notify me when stuff's going on with Mom. For instance, 1.5 years ago, my mom had a severe heart issue and she ended up going to the ER and nobody even called me. I found out on the family Facebook the next day. 2 weeks ago, my mom come down with COVID for the 5th time now, and nobody notified me. I found out on the family Facebook and had to call Mom and say, hey, are you okay? And it's not an intentional thing. They grew up with me being gone, out of sight, out of mind. And they've never been able to make that transition back to the fact that I'm there and I have a phone and I have a home. You can call me. You don't have to wait for me to make that collect call anymore. You can call me.
So, if any of this stuff moves you today, we talked about calling, your elected officials, your senators, assembly people. We focused particularly on the president of the Senate, Senator Cousins and, Speaker Heasey to bring the bills to the floor. But beyond that, there's, you have your whole future in front of you. There's a lot of careers doing innocence work. Some of you may go on to become attorneys. In that case, I would encourage everybody to do at least one pro bono wrongful conviction case in your lifetime. But there's a lot of other careers.
Please ask them not to have that be their mother's will.
Okay, well, I think you just told them that. Right.
Say that again, please. Say that again.
Don't make that pro bono job your mother's will.
Well, I mean, trying to free a wrongfully convicted person. So, yes, clarify. But there's other, but beyond doing that, I mean, certainly, in terms of like being a prosecutor, working in a conviction review unit, or if the DA's office doesn't have one, encouraging them to get one. No matter what your area of practice is, I mean, there's many people that need representation, but there's a career of investigator. Dr. Sorochinsky, she's a researcher and she's an expert, so you could be a researcher. If the researchers don't do experiments, if they don't collect the data, put it in the SPSS, that means advocates like me, we're not going to have current data. We're not going to have up-to-date statistics when we meet with the elected officials, and ask them to pass the laws. Doing lobbying work is another career in the innocence movement. There's, with the advent of new media, there's many podcasts out. So you could think about, maybe doing a podcast, or maybe you write a blog, or there's, having a show on Blog Talk Radio, docu-series, documentary. Within the context of a nonprofit organization, there's disciplines of fundraising and grant writing and social media and doing public relations work. You know, you could be a staffer to an elected official, and you suggest that they, you know, introduce bills pertaining to wrongful conviction. On the reintegration end of it, being a psychologist or doing social work. I mean, that's all being part of the movement. Is investigative reporting. You might be a reporter that's not an investigative reporter, but, you know, occasionally you cover wrongful conviction cases, you know. Prejudicial pretrial media exposure, you know, with the Central Park 5 case being, you know, one of the ultimate examples of that. You know, being a reporter that does not write guilt presumptive oriented articles, but be more objective. And, you know, it's great to have news coverage when people are exonerated. We turn them what we refer to as a learning moment. And that's important. You know, where are they now stories, you know, maybe a year or 2 years, that's important. But you know what the crucial time period is for the media coverage? It's not then. That's important, but the crucial time period is before, while the injustices are still afoot, covering cases, you know, writing, you know, looking into one case or another, coming to when there are evidentiary hearings. You know, some people have had media coverage while they were still in prison, just a journalist writing an article, you know, questioning a conviction based on research they did, and in that way, that case came to the attention of an attorney, an investigator, an advocate, and that got the ball rolling to get that help to then ultimately obtain justice. So those are all ways of participating, you know, in doing innocence work beyond the obvious career of being an attorney.
This is less of a question and basically more of a comment. Alright? I got to give it up to you. Seriously. I really, really do. I have to give it up to you. And I have to give it up to you. Wayne, I got to give it up to you. And I'm going to tell you why I'm giving up all these props. Because the truth of the matter is, it's easy to talk, fight the power, it's easy to stand there, raise your fist, and it's easy to stand there, spit some rap lyrics and this, that, and the third. But the thing about it is, I was locked up with him. I met her son and the other members that make up the Central Park, or now the exonerated 5. I was locked up with him. The difference between me and them is I did my shit. No. And the reason why I point that out because it's a whole different kick. When I got busted, you gotta respect the game. Going on, little perk walk, little pictures, get your little sentence, this, that, and the third. I earned that. I worked for that. It's a conscious decision. When you're guilty and you running up and taking the money or doing a little dirt or whatever it is you did. But it's one thing to sit there and stir every damn day for decades and change.
Yes, right.
Not knowing if you're going to die. He was a baby. I mean, and when I say a baby, and the thing about it is, where do you find the strength as a baby to weather that storm the whole way through and then weather it on parole? As an adult, but I'm gonna tell you like this: for all my knuckle game and for all my prior, little exploits in the streets, I ain't that strong. I ain't that strong. I ain't as strong as us, son. I ain't even as strong as you.
Yeah. You're so real.
There's a question, and I want you to bear in mind what I'm about to ask you. My question is between you and law enforcement. Do you know the most important difference between you and law enforcement? What is the most important difference? The most important difference between you and a law enforcement officer. You think they don't do drugs and they into criminal activities. That's how they have snitches everywhere that do their dirty work for them, and some of them undercover, they gotta be involved in drugs anyway because they're in the hood and they're undercover. The only difference is they take an oath. They take an oath to uphold the law. They take an oath. That means, that should mean something. Take an oath. You're ordinary citizens. You understand? Going about your business, going about your life. The law is there. They say abide by the law. But an oath is an oath to hold the laws. Just like any other criminal, or even worse, because they took an oath.
That's right.
To uphold the law. They
Take
took
an oath.
that
It's
oath.
worse. It's worse when you take an oath.
Any questions for anybody? Students overwhelmed? Well, I want to thank again our guests, and as I mentioned, we have this academic service learning program that we have been running for several semesters now. A couple of people, Robert and Wayne, are here. They participated. They always mention to our students how important family relationships were to them, and the support of the families when, both throughout the conviction and, to kind of get the force and survive, and as they come out, to help them feel welcome and feel back and loved. And so I really do want to give a heartfelt round of applause to those families enduring incarceration, wrongful conviction with their loved ones at this time and, in the time past. Thank you very much again for being here. Thank you for taking the time, and your emotional strength is astounding. And for those of you who are here, students who are still here, I want you to talk to your friends and families about things you've heard today, because this is how we can make this movement bigger. This is how we can spread the word, let people know. I'm sure most of you were not as aware as you are right now of the hardships, of the things that are going on, of the issues that are, both causing wrongful conviction and are the consequences of those convictions. And so I really want you to do that little thing. Just talk to your friend, your mom, like, hey, what'd you do today? Well, I was at this event, okay, and I cried. And I'm sure many of you have, if not in the outside, definitely inside. And so hopefully together we can really bring the change that is needed to life. It's on you, it's your responsibility. You're the generation coming into those administrative positions and law enforcement positions and prosecutorial offices. This is you guys, so you can't unknow this. You are carrying that responsibility with you to do a better job, to do justice by those people who rely on you for doing it right. It's just as simple as that. Just do it right.
They will.
And look back, right? Make sure, like, if you make, like, people make mistakes, right? People are people. We are human. We have the right to make mistakes. But admit it. Like, if you be able to take that responsibility and say, I was wrong. I'm looking back, I did something wrong there. I'm gonna revert, like, I'm gonna help, not rather than resisting. Like in the exonerated 5 case, the prosecutor was insisting that she was right, even in the face of all of the evidence. Even after the exoneration, she was just like, the real rapist actually confessed. He had evidence. He had, like, no, she's like, no, we were still right? That's where the issue is. Like, we have to be able to admit when we're wrong and be able to reverse it. And so we, it's in our hands to do, to make this world a better place. And so I hope we do.
Thank you.
Judge, I know everybody you want to get, but I have to change language depending on how many people y'all got. Let them bow out first.